Sometimes the story that changes your life is the one you didn't want to hear. She was overwhelmed, her daughter fighting a brain tumor, her world already too heavy to carry. When she was told to just go and listen, she didn't want to, but she did. And in that moment, she heard the story of Alexandra Scott, a little girl whose courage would meet her in the middle of her pain and change everything. What began as resistance became purpose. What felt like too much became a mission. Today she stands with Alex's lemonade stand, and her daughter, she is here, she is strong, a graduate, a rower, a survivor. Because sometimes staying changes everything. Welcome to A Hope for a Cure podcast. This is episode 5, part 2, A Mother's Love, the story of Lily Adkins, as told by her mother, Trish Adkins. So, Trish, your family didn't just support the mission, you lived it. Can you take us back to May 2006 when superhero Lily was diagnosed?
Sure. So Lily was 14 months old at diagnosis. Leading up to that time, she had sometime after her first birthday, probably about 13 months, it was probably about a month, started throwing up a lot. And she was a baby. Also had been a 29-week preemie, which sort of works into her story. And we thought she had reflux. You know, when you're in the NICU, they're like preemies, they're going to have reflux. So we thought it was reflux. Then we thought it was a stomach bug. And then none of those things made any sense. And she had been throwing up so much. And since she had been a preemie, she was so much smaller than her peers. And she was losing weight. And the day before, and we had been back and forth to the pediatrician, and even one time my husband took her and they were like, we think it's a bladder infection, so she had started antibiotics, and then we thought, oh, like that's why she's throwing up now, she's on antibiotics. It was like everything seemed so explainable because it's just throwing up, like it's a pretty common thing, or maybe it was spitting up, like we didn't know. And the night before she was diagnosed, she was like sitting on the floor, and I kind of she had kind of stopped cruising. She wasn't quite walking yet, but she had stopped sort of trying, but we just assumed she didn't feel well. And then when I saw her sitting on the floor, she was kind of leaning and bracing herself. And I thought, wow, she's like really weak from throwing up. And it was really scary. And I never thought, I just thought, well, we need a better answer. And we have to do something. So the next day, like I took her back to the pediatrician, and my husband came with me because I was like, we have to go together. Like we need answers now.
Right.
And even at that point, nothing felt like an emergency. It felt urgent, right? And our pediatrician, there's many doctors in the practice. So like I think, there's like 5, and we were on our 5th one. We finally got the 5th one. And we told her everything that was happening. And she looked at us and she was like, you're not going home. You're going to drive, to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. I'm going to call ahead. And she said this weird thing that I didn't understand at the time. She said, so many of these gliomas are really treatable. And I was like, what is she saying? Like glioma?
Right.
Like, what are you talking about? Like she knew without knowing. And she probably shouldn't have said that, but I just knew. And, we went to CHOP, and it was like a whirlwind. I'll never forget the diagnosis day. Like, sitting there and being in the ER, and then, Lily through it all, she was like happy and bubbly, like knowing what we know now and how the hydrocephalus from the brain tumor was what was causing her to throw up. Like, I don't understand why she was so happy. Like she was so giggly. Like, she had a CAT scan, and we were like laying in the bed, and she was laying on the bed in the ER. And like, I remember I was blowing raspberries in her belly, and she's like giggling, like we're just trying to make her happy and feel good. And out of the corner of my eye, I can picture it. I probably picture it every day. I remember seeing them all walking towards us. And when you see that group of white coats walking, that's it.
It's
And
not
ahead
good
of me,
news.
right.
Mm,
and head of them was the nurse hanging like an IV. Uh, And I was like, what? And they just told us, she has a mass, surgery's tomorrow. These are
mm,
the IVs. This is our, we called our brain tumor cocktail. And I was like, why? I remember backing away and thinking, let's get Lily and let's
mhm,
leave the country. Like,
mm,
Oh
I
yeah.
don't know what that would have done, but I wanted
mm.
to run. It was
Understandable.
it was my dad's birthday, and
Ah,
because going on, I hadn't even called him to wish him happy birthday. So Merry
mm,
Christmas, and I was like, I can't wish you happy birthday right now because of what's happening. He's like, what are you talking about? It was like it's so shocking. It is
yeah.
not
Sure.
what you'd
It's,
ever think or expect.
mhm.
Sure. Sure.
It's hard to believe that it's happening to you.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
I know you've shared a lot with us, and if you're comfortable, um, please tell us her exact diagnosis. And if you're not, we can go to the next question.
oh no, that's fine. Lily was diagnosed with an ependymoma,
Mm,
not anaplastic. At the time, I think it was just regular ependymoma with well
mm,
differentiated edges, which I guess was good. I remember when her, on the scan,
mm,
the surgeon thought it looked like one thing and really prepped us for the worst, prepped us for, other tumors, I guess. I
mm.
mean, none of them are good, but they're
Right.
all, and he came out of surgery almost gleeful that he really thought it was a ependymoma, but he didn't tell
Mm,
us that at the time. We waited until pathology,
mhm,
a week or so later, to tell us that information. And yeah,
mm. That that was a hard season. That was a storm that just devastated your family. What do you remember most about that season in your life?
there was so many times where I felt both completely paralyzed by shock
Mm,
and frantic and crazy and like a busy bee trying to do everything. There was no normal speed. I think the only thing that kept me normal was my dad was like, you need to get dressed every day. You need to blow it. I mean, my dad, when he was alive, was very vain, but it was such good advice because he's like, you have to get up, you have to wash your hair,
mhm,
brush your teeth, put on your lipstick, put on clothes. And this is my dad, which makes me laugh. But he was right. So every day, that was the only thing I could do some days. I was like, I
mm,
will get dressed, I will look nice, I will be ready to go. And then sometimes I was just completely paralyzed. And then other times I was like, I'm gonna make 1,000 phone calls and do 1,000 things at once and not stop to pause or think. It's just so abnormal. Like when it
mhm.
happens, it's not, and there's no roadmap. Like I know
Right.
families have been in the battle for years and years and dealt with multiple relapses. It's still not normal, but
Mhm.
sometimes when I talk to them, they have like a system for coping. But when it first happens, you have nothing. There's nothing. There's a million books, there's a million things, but none of it prepares you for this. This is, it's awful.
You're absolutely spot on with that. I know in the beginning you had to travel from South Jersey to Houston for proton treatment.
We did. We did. So Lily had surgery and spent about a month at CHOP. Uh,
Hmm.
and proton radiation was still really, really new then for babies. It
Hmm.
was new everywhere. There weren't many places. They were digging, there's now the Proton Center, at Penn and at CHOP, and they were digging the accelerator pit for the proton accelerator. You
Hmm.
could see it outside of her room window. And they were like, well, that won't be ready. So you're going to have to go somewhere. So we chose Houston. My husband's parents at
Hmm.
the time lived in Houston. So we were really lucky because we had not only somewhere to stay, but we had
Hmm.
his parents who had flown up here to support us and love us. And we knew being with them would give us, the support system we needed. And because we needed to be taken care of, like we needed our parents. The value of grandparents who are
Hmm.
involved, we never would have gotten through if it weren't for both sets of our parents. I just the love they showed us and the support, both different, our families are different, but there's no way we could have done it without them. And we're so lucky and blessed that we have that in our lives. So we went down to Houston, which was so far away. And we, Lily was our only child. We got lucky with the jobs that we had, that they found remote projects. Like no one worked remote then
Right, right.
in 2007. So but we found ways to cobble together work, and coworkers of my husband's donated their vacation time to him. So
Oh, wow.
we got through. But if we didn't have all of those things, like, for families who have to travel, childhood cancer is devastating in a whole other way. It adds a whole other layer of financial uncertainty. If you have other children, you have to leave at home. There's so much that goes into that, but it was, we were just really lucky that we were able to do that. And Lily was one of the first babies that ever received proton radiation for brain tumor. She was kind of in the first cohort, which I only
Wow.
really recently doing some research on something else. And proton radiation is one of those game-changing therapies that now is more widely available. Proton centers
Hmm.
everywhere, but in 2007, I think there were 3 or 4 in the United States.
Hmm.
And now there's hundreds more. And that's incredible because it's really effective, and
Hmm.
it also minimizes some of the damage that like full radiation can cause
Hmm.
to.
Hmm. So the doctors actually thought Lily might never walk without braces or a walker. Can you share what that was like, watching her just defy those expectations?
Yeah, because of where her tumor was, it really impacted her mobility. It caused ataxia, which is like that shakiness and
Hmm.
imbalance. It caused some low muscle tone throughout her body. So she was about 2, and we had been in PT and OT and doing
Hmm.
yoga and doing everything, and she wasn't progressing to the point where they thought she would ever walk independently. And I guess at that time, the body of sort of standard of care was like, it's been a year and she hasn't walked, so she's like probably won't. Like that should not be your expectation. And I
Hmm.
remember that was told to me at an appointment, and it was just me with Lily. And I like did not tell my husband that until years later because I was so upset.
Wow.
And
Hmm.
I just felt like no. I remember I was like floored, and I couldn't even speak of it. I told my best friend, and she like really pepped me up, and I was like, I'm not telling my husband because this is a lie. Like this isn't true. Like that was, and I think that doctor is so happy it wasn't true, by the
Hmm.
way, because she was 3.5
Hmm.
ish. She took like her first full independent steps at the Cherry Hill Mall in the Nordstrom. I think it had
Wow.
just opened. She was excited by the handbags, which makes me
Oh,
laugh. She just took off. We would take her everywhere. She had those cute little pull behind therapy walker, and we took her
mhm.
everywhere. And she just took off laughing and giggling through that mall. It was Black Friday. I think of that all the time, like that pure, it was just like pure childhood glee. Like she finally got it. And since then she got rid of those braces probably when she was like 7 or 8. She had little
Wow.
braces that she didn't need them anymore. She'd gotten
Wow.
strong enough. And she danced for years. I shoved her into dance when she could
Hmm.
barely dance because I saw something on the news about a disabled ballet dancer
Hmm.
like use ballet to like improve his mobility. I was like, oh, let's try it. And
Wow.
and she tried every sport, many unsuccessfully. They were not her jam. Um, and now she's a D2 college rower. So she just
Oh,
Mm.
wow.
did
Wow.
through everything. And it wasn't easy. None of these steps were easy. They were all hard work and all, her grit and her strength to get
Hmm.
through,
Hmm.
but she did it. And I don't know. It's incredible. You hear those stories like I was never supposed to walk, it's like a
Right.
life. But it was so real for Lily. And I just always look at
Hmm.
her. I'm like, look at her. I get it. I get what miracles are now because she did it.
Hmm. So that was part of her healing, right? But I
Yeah.
did she use that as advocacy also?
She did. When she first started to row in high school, she had a hard time because through all of this, still she had like low tone in her legs, and
Hmm.
but she loved to be on the water. She'd done a rowing camp um on the Cooper River in New Jersey, like in middle school. And she was like, I love this. I love being on the water. I love being in the boat. I love racing. It's hard and it's fun. And so when she started her freshman year, she had a really hard time on our high school team. And
Hmm.
She has a shunt that was placed after her brain tumor and it failed. And that shunt is what stops the hydrocephalus because there are some
Mhm.
scars in her ventricles. And that failed at the end of her freshman year, and that was terrifying. And corrected by surgery, but it was so scary. And her, I think after that, that team was like, I don't think rowing's for you. Like maybe you can be a coxswain, which is like
Mhm.
you don't row when you're a coxswain, you like steer the boat. You're kind of like an
Mhm.
on-boat coach, and she didn't want to do that, and she was so devastated. And
Oh.
but she fought. She found another coach in Philadelphia to work with her, and then she found a
Mhm.
different rowing club to join who talked to her and told her like, well, Lily, like you're a really strong athlete. Like if you ever thought about doing para rowing,
Wow.
and she was like, oh, and she learned a lot about what disabled athletes go through and met other
Mhm.
disabled athletes. And
Mhm.
she found a place like in the boat as a para rower and as like a really strong athlete. And
Wow.
someone just seeing her as like who she was changed
Mhm.
everything. And then in turn, to get back to what the actual question was, sorry, I got sidetracked.
That's okay.
She she started talking and sharing her story. She had always learned to share her childhood cancer story through Alex's. We hosted so many lemonade stands through the years. Like one year, she'd been on the news talking about her lemonade stands and all of these things. So she was really comfortable sharing her story about cancer. But through this experience of wanting to do something more and,
Mhm.
wanting to be an athlete, she applied all of those skills she learned as an ambassador for Alex's to, talking about being a disabled athlete and
Wow.
talking about how important inclusion in sports is. And so that's just like one way, like everything from Alex's has reverberated into something new and great.
Mhm. That's amazing. That's an amazing and such an inspiring story. I want to shift back a little. You talked about your husband and the things that he was dealing with. So, how, what challenges did you and your husband have as a married couple? And how did you guys get over that? How did you overcome those obstacles?
You know, when we left the pediatrician's office the day Lily was diagnosed, before we knew what was happening, I remember we had just crossed over the Walton Bridge, and my husband turned and looked at me and said, "We're still going to be in this together, right?"
Mhm.
And I was just like, "Well, of course." But you know how hard this is on families and relationships, and you
Mhm.
hear so many stories, and I don't know. It's like when he asked that, I think it set like an intention in my heart that okay, and for both of us that like this is going to be really hard on our marriage and we're going to have to acknowledge that immediately.
Mhm.
And it worked. I mean, it's not that it was easy. It was just like we really were so lucky with his parents and having that support when we were in
Mhm.
Texas because I remember a couple times like we went out on a date night to see a movie or something when we were in Texas and like left
Mhm.
Lily with his parents and we could trust
Mhm.
them and
Nice.
feeling bad about it and feeling scared. But then once we like relaxed and everything was fine, like it was so important for our relationships to still just
Mhm.
who we were outside of cancer parents.
Right.
And I think also he was so into Alex's lemonade stand before it had anything to do with our family directly.
Mhm.
And me drinking the lemonade along with him,
Mhm.
it became something that we did together. Our two younger kids weren't around when Lily was first diagnosed,
Mhm.
but they were like born into childhood
Mhm.
cancer. We were
Yeah.
still very much, we were still scared it was going to come back. We were still recovering. And having something that we could do together,
Mhm.
I know it seems silly to say, like, oh, like hosting lemonade stands together really helped our
No, it
marriage,
doesn't.
but it did because it was
Yes.
fun. Their memories too, their positive family memories of
Mhm.
activities we did. And bringing that to our marriage is so important because it's so hard. Like you're just all in it for your child
Mhm.
but you need each other. So
Yes.
you have to be all in it for each other too. And that is way easier said than done.
That's why we always talk to the couples, just to give a little bit of advice to parents and partners who are battling because it's a hard, tough road. What
Yeah.
advice would you give? for husband and wives and partners and spouses, people who are just in relationships and trying to work through it together? What advice do you have for them?
I think acknowledging that it's hard and that parts of your relationship could be in jeopardy. I think almost acknowledging the danger and knowing
Mhm.
that it exists is
Mm,
important. And then after that, like not feeling guilty for taking time with one another. Yes, childhood cancer when your child is diagnosed, it is all encompassing, but
mhm,
it is okay to take 30 minutes alone together. Like it is okay to step away and go eat. I remember even at the hospital, like going and walking to Starbucks with him while knowing that his parents were there. And like Lily was in the hospital and the doctors and nurses had it. She wasn't alone and whatever. And it was good to go take 30 minutes to walk around the block and get a cup of coffee. Like, and it was okay. And it was actually important. Like it's important to do that because it's like the oxygen mask thing, right? Like you can't be
mhm.
helped with anyone if you're like worried about conflict in a relationship or these things. It's just you have to
Right.
make that space for each other.
That is so true, and that is amazing. That's great advice to give to people. Now, just going back to your entire family, including Chloe and Nicholas, Lily's super siblings. How has cancer shaped your entire family?
So on the bad side, I'll go with the bad, and I'll go with the lemons, and I'll talk about the lemonade.
Mhm,
I think
No.
it's been hard for them each differently. Chloe
mhm,
is just a couple years younger than Lily, and when she was little, and when she was old enough to kind of express her needs, like maybe
mhm.
like two-ish, she
Yes.
would like demand to go to Lily's MRIs with her. And she went to, from the beginning, she went to every clinic appointment with her. I was home with the girls and
Mhm,
she would come along. And so she was there and experienced sort of like the abnormalcy of it all. Like it isn't normal for a toddler to have to get MRIs every few months. Like this is weird, right? And or to be sedated. So she had like this front row seat to what this life was. And I think that was really hard. And then my son is 7 years younger than Lily. So he
mhm,
had some of that, but to a little bit lesser extent. She was older.
mhm,
But both of my younger kids went to like PT and OT. Like Lily was in PT and OT forever and like, grew up in PT and OT gyms playing themselves and learning. I laugh when I think about like the circus of the Adkins and, in a PT gym, like, like they're just like whatever. And so those are some of the lemons, but
mhm,
the lemonade has been they've learned that they can get through hard things.
mhm,
It's horrible that they know kids can die. It's horrible that they've known kids
Mm.
they've loved to have died. This is horrible. And that breaks my heart all the time. I feel like I'm always apologizing to them for that, but they also know that they can get through that.
mhm,
And they also know that they can do something. They've each grown in their own ways. And my middle daughter is forever a scientist in her heart and always has been. And she has learned that her love of science is something that can help people.
mhm.
And she'll do that. And my younger son, who could sell you anything and is always coming up with business, has learned that he can use his amazing gift with words and persuasion to share, the story of Alex and the story of his sister and the story of our family to make a difference. And they've both learned together that
Mhm.
siblings are really important in this and shouldn't be forgotten, and that we want to know and the world wants to know how they've been impacted. And I think that they have learned how important that is to sort of share their own truth and that they're just as important as their sister. And a lot of that has come through like the experiences they've had as kids fundraising for Alex's lemonade stand.
Well, that children and their ability to adapt is just that's so inspiring just by itself. But as a mom, as a science writer and a mom, how does it feel that Chloe wants to be a research science, kind of following in your footsteps, and Nicholas seems to be the official spokesperson of the family. So what is it like watching your children transform that pain into purpose at such a young age?
It is so cool. Like Chloe is a junior in high school and thinking about where she's going to apply to colleges next year and thinking about what she wants to do in science. And, I'll drag her along if there's an Alex's science conference in Philadelphia. I'll drag her along but I shouldn't say drag because she's like excited to be there and
Mhm.
have her see science up front and see how scientists are talking about things. And, I'm just so proud of her for knowing that she
Yes.
can make a difference. Like we've made it clear to all three of our kids, even
Mhm.
Lily, that like, well, my husband and I are in for childhood cancer advocacy for life
Mhm.
until there's cures for all kids. They don't have to be, they don't have like cancer doesn't have to like own them,
Right.
but they can decide and they've all chosen, even Lily, like, she has chosen to share her story and continues
Mhm.
to share. And Chloe choosing science and whether she ends up being a pediatric oncologist or an
Mhm.
environmental scientist or whatever she's doing, choosing to take something she has a passion for to make the world a better place, to
Mhm.
me, it's like she doesn't always see it if she's like, well, what if I want to like, study nature? And I'm like, well, you're changing the world. You're doing all of this great advocacy. You're gonna make the world a better place. And that's gonna help kids everywhere, including kids with cancer. Like to us, it always like trickles back, right? As silly as it is. And like, you know, Nicholas, I just am always blown away. Like he just is 13, but
Mhm.
he's been interviewed on the news several times. And the last one question, and I
Wow.
am like jaw drops when he answers these things. Because I'm like, why? Like, we didn't talk about this, like Lily and I used to like prep and Chloe, like, okay, this is what they're gonna ask you. This is stuff you
Mhm.
could. And Nicholas, he just is like, okay, give it to me. And, but he spends a lot of time thinking about it. And he's always the kid who's like, you have to give to this fundraiser. You have to give to this. Like, make sure you tip the waitress. Like, oh, you're not adding $1 at the end. Like, he has such a generous spirit.
Mhm.
And it's wonderful. Like, that's how you should be.
That is wonderful, and that
It's
is
really
how you should.
cool, like to see
Yes.
them.
It is. It is.
I love how you use the Alex's lemonade analogy just in explaining how you talk about the lemons, the bitter things that you receive from pediatric cancer. But then I love how you talk about that lemonade, the way that your family and the amazing people at Alex's lemonade stand took those bitter lemons and turned them to a delicious lemonade. And Lily wasn't supposed to walk. She took those lemons and now she rose competitively. So, what does her determination teach you about possibility?
She just this weekend, she did like an indoor rowing competition. It was the first one of her this spring season. And that's when these athletes are on ergs, like the rowing machine inside,
Mhm.
and they row at 2K, which is like the length of a regatta race. And they row so hard that like
Mhm.
a lot of them like fall off and like almost puke. Like it is like watching it is like gut wrenching. And when she was rowing, she was having like some wrist pain.
Mhm.
And she is like in so much pain. And sometimes she would like take her hands off of the erg handles and shake it out. And sometimes she'd scream out in pain, but then she like kept going to the
Wow.
finish. And when I was watching her, it's just like such a metaphor for life. Like you just keep going and you can scream in pain, you can pause for a moment, you
Mhm.
can, you know, but you keep going, you can reach the finish. And it doesn't matter. Like her time was great. But there's been other races where her times have not been great, but she finished. And like like I just love watching her do things because it's not because I love watching her struggle. I
Mhm.
love watching when she stands up,
Mhm.
it's always magical. I remember when she was really learning how to walk and like, I mean, and all babies are this way, whether they're,
Mhm.
whether they're dealing with their typical development or not. And they push up like on all fours and into downward
Mhm.
dog, and they stand up and then they toddle down, but they get back up. It feels like magic.
Mhm.
And I love that. I it's the standing back up, but the standing back up can only happen if you've fallen, and nobody wants to fall.
Right.
I don't know. It's incredible when you see that success out of failure. It's
Mhm.
just I forget all the time. I forget constantly
Mhm.
that that's how I have to go. But when I remember, it feels really good to remember that, yeah, was a big failure. But here I go. I can recover. I can do it.
Yeah, that's encouraging. It's just the way she lives is just so encouraging because life always gives us these obstacles that we fall down for. But to
Right.
see someone like superhero, can't call her a kid now, but
Right.
superhero
I
Lily,
know.
to see all that she had to deal with and to see her just get back up, that's inspiring to everyone. Looking back on just before her diagnosis, she was so young. But how do you define strength compared to before she was diagnosed to now?
I'm thinking. I think I think before I didn't think about strength very much.
Yes.
It's almost like before childhood cancer, like everything feels like such a given. Like my baby's gonna grow up, like she's gonna walk, we're gonna go to preschool, we're gonna go to kindergarten, she'll play soccer, she'll do whatever she wants, she'll dance in a dance recital, all those things, like they feel so given
Mm-hmm.
about it much. And then when something happens, you think, oh Lord, like I need strength right now. I don't have it. I feel
Mm-hmm.
so weak. And so I think afterwards, you just have an awareness of like
Mm-hmm.
what it is like to really feel like you're weak and feel
Yes.
like, what am I going to do? And you realize that you aren't weak. You just feel that way.
Yes.
I think all of us are so strong. I mean, human beings have to go through horrible things all the
Yes.
time.
Mm.
Like, it's like, but we're all so strong. Like, we'll be fine,
Right.
And, but I don't think you think about it when you don't
Mm.
have it. You just are like, oh, I'm good,
You're right. We take the small things for granted. But
Mhm.
it's even though we have a lot as humans to go through, it's so much harder when it's your
Yeah.
child. It's like it's that's just so hard. And speaking of that, what would you say to a parent hearing the words, your child has a brain tumor for the first time?
Well, it's horrible. I mean, it's garbage, right? I mean,
Mhm.
I always think like acknowledging that is so important because it's like
Mhm.
awful. Like you really have to like, and we're all different, but for me, acknowledging how horrible something is really helps me a lot to just
Mhm.
like, and I think if you're a person who can compartmentalize and be like, well,
Mhm.
this is horrible, but then that's one way you can get through. And we're all different. Like for me, that really works. Like the lemon and lemonade analogy really works for me because I can like put things here and
Mhm.
not get rid of them because those things still stink. They didn't go
Mhm.
away. But then I can put things over here and maybe I can try and dwell in the lemonade more and the
Right.
hope and get through. I think there is hope. I think there are options. There are so many people that care, and there are
Mhm.
so many incredible families and
Yeah.
incredible people. I hate
Mm.
child cancer, but
Mhm.
I wouldn't trade the people we know for the world. Like
Mhm.
Liz J. Scott, Liz is always forever my hero. And,
Mhm.
for her being a mom and fighting for all her kids and all she does. And Jay's great too. So Liz Scott, yes. So Liz Scott is Alex's mom and
Yeah.
Jay Scott is
Oh.
Alex's dad. They're both the co-executive directors of the foundation. They both work there every day tirelessly. They're incredible and, work through fundraising, work through all these issues of like what research to fund,
Mhm.
also work to innovate and to grow the foundation always.
Thank you for sharing that. And Liz and her husband, they were amazing. They are amazing, and they're doing
Mm.
this work every day. People don't see that. People don't see that when everyone else, when the world is sleeping, these nonprofit leaders, like Liz and her
Yeah.
husband, they're up and they're working, and
Mhm.
hours are not short. The hours are long, but that purpose in life is so rewarding. And speaking of that purpose, when you think of superhero kid Alex and superhero Lily, these two determined girls who were told they might not be able to do this and they might not be able to do that. What stands out to you?
But they did it anyway.
And,
Lily always says that. Like they told me I couldn't, but I did it anyway. And she says it with a shrug, like it was just so easy. But because it wasn't, and but I mean, they did it anyway. They stood back up. They were like, and even if standing back up takes years and
Mm,
years, they still did it.
yes.
And I think that's incredible. Lily, when she rose on her hand, she
Mm,
writes Alex Brooke, who was a friend of hers that passed away when Lily was in
mm,
fifth grade, and Cole, who was a really close friend of hers that passed away a couple years ago.
right.
And she writes that every race, Alex Brooke Cole, and I see her like when I like zoom in, especially in videos or like when I'm
Mhm,
when I'm able to be close and I can see her hands, I
mhm,
see her like looking down and like
mm,
remembering that she has those friends with
mhm.
her always, and that's why she's doing it. And I don't know. I just think it's incredible how connected we all are and how, yeah, childhood cancer maybe on the surface what we think connects us, but
Mhm.
really it's all the hope that connects us and that strength
That
that connects, not
you are,
cancer. Like we can't give cancer credit.
that's right. You are so right. And that is 100% true. And I'm glad that Lily used her two friends as inspiration. And just thinking about Alex's lemonade stand. So it started with one child and one stand. What can one family now, listening today, watching today, what can they do to make a difference? What can they do to support this amazing foundation?
You can host a lemonade stand in your front yard. You can stop every time you see a lemonade stand, and whether it's for Alex's or it's kids raising money for an animal shelter or, to have some extra ice cream money in their pocket in the summer,
Mhm.
you can stop and buy a cup of lemonade and tell them they're doing a good job and they're making a difference one cup at a time.
Hmm.
Anyone can do that. I think it's great, through the years hosting lemonade stands with Lily. Some of the coolest donations have been when kids have come up and like emptied change in the jar that they clearly had saved in their piggy bank. And that's an easy thing to do to buy a cup of lemonade, but you can also just sell a couple cups in the front yard and know that if you raise $10 or if you raise 1,000 or 100 or whatever it is, it makes a difference. It all comes together because it's not just about your lemonade stand, it's about all of us working together.
Yes, and every little bit counts. So, what gives you the most hope right now?
I think knowing that since the foundation and since Alex's first lemonade stand, like almost 26 years ago, that
Mhm,
families and kids are still hosting lemonade stands,
mhm,
that people care and people care enough to hold lemonade stands and people care enough to make large donations and people care enough to continue to research pediatric cancer and to treat kids with cancer, which cannot be an easy job in any way.
right.
Know that is what gives me hope because all of that has led to all of like the amazing things we're seeing happening in research and more
Yeah,
treatment, more cures, and more advancements for kids.
yes. Well, this is your space, Trish. And one of the things we want to make sure that we do on the Hope for a Cure podcast is give you any time to share something that you maybe would not have shared, or maybe we didn't ask you the right questions. Is there something that you would like to share that we haven't asked yet?
Hmm. I think one thing is that when childhood cancer happens, it doesn't just happen to the child and it doesn't just happen to their parents. It reverberates everywhere.
Mhm.
Everyone is impacted around them. Siblings are impacted so much. And, you know, I think often sort of forgotten, not purposely, but because it's
Mhm.
like an emergency situation and, they need love and support too.
Mhm.
Grandparents are so impacted as they watch their babies
Yes,
worry about their own babies.
yes.
They're so important. All of the friends everywhere and family, everyone, neighbors, it's so massive
Mm,
and And childhood cancer is rare. It's like 15,000 kids a year in the US. It's not this big number, but the impacts are so huge. There was this study I think about a lot, and they looked at 1 year, 2017,
Mhm.
and they modeled how many, they call them DALYs. It's like disability adjusted life years. And that's like the amount of years that are impacted by a sickness
Mhm.
or a disability of healthy years. So they looked at
Right.
1 year and the number of kids diagnosed or battling cancer that year and found that in 1 year, 11.5 million healthy years of life were lost.
Mm.
Childhood cancer isn't rare then. The impact is enormous.
Exactly.
What it does to families is massive. So when we can find cures, safer treatments, and then also offer families all of the support that they
Hmm.
need, care, caring about siblings, helping with utility, all the things that families need when this is happening, which is like everything, right?
Yes.
we
Yes.
can we can like change those years of life loss. Like we can change the world, and it's the impact of curing one kid with cancer.
Mhm.
It's massive.
It
One
is.
other thing to share, I guess, is early in Alex's, there was a story of a then girl named Taylor who had a bone sarcoma that had like metastasized to her lungs, and she was treated on a trial that Alex's Lemonade Stand helped fund, and
Mhm.
it saved her life.
Wow.
And now Taylor she went to college, she became
Mhm.
a pediatric nurse, she got married, and now
Mhm.
she has two kids. She's mom to two. Taylor's story is one that I always like when I'm feeling down, when you hear something bad, I always think, wow, like look at Taylor. That's what science can do, and that's what Lemonade can do. Like she
Very
just
inspirational.
all is guaranteed, right?
Hmm.
Experience. And I just always think that's so important to remember that we're not just curing cancer, we're curing and healing families in the world.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that story. That was very
Right.
inspiring.
Trish, when you look at Lily at 20 in college, rowing, advocating, what word comes to mind?
She's just so badass, man. Lily, she's so, like if you look at Lily, she's like, I mean, well, now she's like super like she's super jacked up from all of her working out and everything and training. But when you meet Lily, you think, oh, she's so sweet and graceful and polite and but she is tough and
Mhm.
she doesn't stop. And I just love that about her, that she just is so empowered. Like despite being like everything against her, she's just the opposite of that. She is full of hope and determination and strength.
What is the one thing you wish people knew about battling pediatric cancer?
That it's not over even when cures happen. I think
Mhm.
that's important to know too. And, there are scars that are carried, and I'm not entirely sure how we ever overcome that. I mean, I think we can with safer treatments and quicker treatments and better cures, but it continues. Like there are things that, mothers carry forever with them and families carry forever with them because they love their child so much and, and they've been faced with really scary things and that their families carry. And I think it's important to acknowledge that it's not like something you can just be like, well, that's over. It's forever, which can be good and bad.
Trish, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing Lily's amazing and powerful story. We appreciate the work and the mission behind Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation. And hopefully, people will visit your foundation and support it. Never know. We want to take some of those lemons and turn those lemons into lemonade, like Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation has been doing for years. We appreciate you. We appreciate the great work that the foundation does for families who are battling this awful disease. And in the words that you said, we all are truly one, and we need to look out for one another. And that's what you and your family has been doing. And that's what Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation has been doing. So keep up the good work. And it was such an honor and a pleasure to have you with us today.
Yes, Trish, thank you very much. It was an honor.
Thank you. It was an honor to be able to share Lily's story. good to share. And, I hope it reverberates with others too. I always love hearing other stories.
Trish, thank you so much for sharing not only the incredible work of Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation, but also your family's deep and personal but inspiring story. Stories like yours remind us that behind every research grant, every clinical trial, and every advocacy effort is a child, a family, and a future worth fighting for.
So as we close today's episode, we're going to do something we always do here on the podcast. We're going to give the final word to the superhero because every child deserves a future. We can all do more than hope for a cure.
That's so true, Jason. And every superhero deserves to be celebrated for the way that they continue to love and live and shine brightly and show the world what courage really is while fighting this horrible disease. So, guys, thanks for watching, and we will see you next week on a Hope for a Cure podcast. Later, Gators.
Thank you, guys.